All right. Thank you very much for your introduction. And honestly, this is not really the thing that I do. And in fact, all of this started when I saw this beautiful poster that you guys did for ISMRM in Singapore. We're all in Singapore and you guys tweeted it. And I needed to make a practical joke on my good friend Nicolas and Agathe. So really, over 3 minutes, I took a decidedly old classic 1946 paper by Purcell and others, a discovery of nuclear magnetic resonance, which brought Purcell a Nobel Prize, and that's a foundation for modern day MRI. I changed libre to conserver. I slapped PDF on it, and I sent it to those guys. All right? Okay, I'm glad you also appreciate the joke. They loved it. We had a beer, we had a laugh, and I forgot about it. And then, sometime in summer, I'm getting an invitation from them, right? Which essentially said, come over, we're gonna pay for your flight and hotel for you to pee on our parade. Sorry, for you to provide, and I quote, an antagonist perspective, whatever the hell it is. Now, you know, when you have friends asking you for something, even if it's kind of a weird request, I guess you comply. So here I am. Okay. Now I'm not an antagonist. Neither am I a Luddite. I enjoy and love the wonders of modern technology, right? But I'm a simple guy and I'll make a simple observation. Nobody was concerned about so-called reproducibility crisis in 1946, right? There were no computers, no internet, no GitHub, and somehow people did manage to do amazing foundational science. And actually, on a personal level, you may disagree, but to me, browsing through old volumes of physics or math journals, I'm a theoretical physicist by training, papers felt more intellectually honest, understated, they underpromised but over-delivered, and maybe they didn't have the need to oversell. And so, you know, that's really what the point of this prank. And I think Nikolai and Agathe got the joke and got the message that, you know, it's fashionable to bash the PDF, but is our problem really the PDF, right? So what is actually our problem? So if you guys want me to be a contrarian, let me step back and ask why we're all here. I think this is an unusual meeting in a sense it's not a meeting on some particular science, but it's a meta meeting on the way we do science, right? And in a sense, I guess what brings us all here is we're in some sense concerned with the way science is done. And because it's such a big problem, it's usually useful to spend time to define a precise goal. And the more precise you are going to be, the more we'll realize that maybe each of all of us has slightly different goal. For example, is the focus on reproducibility per se, for the sake of it, is what we really want? I can give you a devil's advocate example. We can have a string of very incremental, mediocre papers that are absolutely reproducible, right? You know, attention is a zero-sum game. If you prioritize one thing, then maybe you don't prioritize taking risks and, you know, making big leaps. Over past few decades, papers became more polished with better statistical analysis, yet notably more incremental. That's not me, although I agree. This is my fellow colleague at NYU, Linda Moy, who is editor-in-chief of Radiology, the leading medical imaging journal. I personally think that best papers that we have today are as good as anything in the past, but maybe the average, not so much. Maybe we're drowning in kind of mediocrity. And that's really, I want to explore, what do we actually want? Now, each of us, again, may want something different, and I cannot speak for all of us. I can only speak for myself. I want good science. Or define good science. Well, you know, at some level, we all know it when we see it. Famously, Richard Hyman from Bell Labs said, those who have done it want to do it again. Creative, unexpected, startling, refreshing, eye-opening. Those things come to me when I hear good science. Reproducible, it doesn't come to me just because it's kind of implied. Isn't it an oxymoron? Isn't there such a thing as irreproducible good science? So how to make science better? Well, it's like you can have carrot or stick type of responses. You can focus on policing researchers into being honest, and that's the whole point of peer review, and maybe now modern technologies for scanning for data manipulation, scanning for plagiarism using AI methods for that. Or you can say maybe we should learn from the past and say, how about select bright people and leave them alone? And that's the carrot, but the stick is implied. Fear of losing peer respect is actually the biggest stick in this situation. So just to focus on one of those basic policing methods, peer review, has it made us better scientists? So this is the curve that I got from Google Ngram. It's basically mentioning the term peer review across all sources over the years. And you see the spike actually is around after 1965 or so. It's quite incredible that whole foundational math, physics, Maxwell equations, quantum theory, foundational neuroscience, and even discovery of DNA in 1953 was all done without peer review, or practically without peer review, maybe with editorial approval. Who allowed these people without any institutional bureaucracy, without proverbial reviewer number two? It's always reviewer number two, and they know who you are. Who allowed them to create all this foundational knowledge? And now, think about it. After we've scaled up the science and kind of corporativized it a bit in the modern era, the amount of innovation per paper, is it higher after 1970 or before? What is the common phenotype that was shared by these people? I read a number of biographies. I'm sure many of you did as well. They were obviously curiosity-driven. They were irreverent to authority, intellectually honest and courageous. And for our purposes, valued reputation above all else. They loathe to publish bad or incremental mediocre work. I kind of miss this phenotype. If the standards are set so high, do we even need formal police? Deep inside, where are our best reviewers? We know better than any referee in 99% of the cases where the bodies are buried and where the corners are cut. Essentially, incentives drive our behavior. And the choice is to police or to come up with better method of policing, like AI scanning for plagiarism or something, or to have incentives, the right incentives to not commit crimes in the first place. And so maybe we can look into the past to learn from past successes. What have we lost? What we can do better? Looking at the past is impossible without mentioning Bell Labs. It's such a great idea factory. This is actually the book. We had a book club at NYU. We invited the author, John Gertner, to give us a lecture. It was really great. Highly recommend this book. And from that book, John Pierce, one of the major scientists and also science managers, was musing, what can we adopt from the success of Bell Labs today? Of course, you cannot replicate a government-sanctioned monopoly. You cannot do it today, but soon, way past when Bell Labs was past its prime, in 1997, Pierce formulated 4 bullet points that he thought you can take into the future. I think you will find them very interesting. First, a technically competent management all the way to the top. Hello, university administrators. Researchers didn't have to raise funds. Hello, funding agencies. Research on a topic or system could be and was supported for years, so kind of job security and kind of also with point number 2. And the last point, research could be terminated without damning the researchers. So changing of careers and trying new things was also encouraged, right? You can view this from today's purposes as a set of good incentives. Another interesting story about incentives to publish or not to publish too much is a famous story of Ken Wilson, one of the most influential theoretical physicists of the 20th century. Young Ken Wilson, after PhD and postdoc, had only 3 papers to show when he was hired at Cornell as assistant professor, and only 1 article by the time his tenure review came up that he published since. Yet the tenure was granted. And the comment at the committee meeting was along the line of, too bad he spoiled an otherwise perfect record by publishing an article. They respected this guy so much. He was so brilliant that it was obvious for them that they just need to promote them. And they wanted, actually, one of the people said, we wanted to make a point that it would be possible. Is it possible today in any field? That was an obviously right choice. Ken Wilson came up with rethinking the whole idea of so-called renormalization group, which became a central idea of modern physics and unified the way we look at phase transitions and high energy physics and critical phenomena and quantum field theory. It's just an amazing piece of work by one person. You can read this beautiful expose by Paul Ginsberg. Paul was one of his first graduate students, but for us, he is interesting because he is the founder of the original archive preprint server. Okay, the world is small. And so what Wilson had was not being able to prove himself every month or so by gimmicks, publications, H indices, etc. So essentially, he wasn't subjected to this hyper competition, which is the subject of this influential PNAS opinion piece published 10 years ago. Hyper competition for the resources and positions suppresses the creativity, cooperation, risk-taking, and original thinking. And for us, the main quote, substantial numbers of publications whose research results cannot be replicated are likely symptoms of today's highly pressured environment for research. So they actually think that the root cause is the long-standing assumption that the research system will expand indefinitely. And of course, everybody produces more students, so the number of people grow exponentially, and no system can sustain exponential growth. So their solution was to gradually reduce the number of entrants into PhD programs. Some people like it, some not. I don't know where I stand myself, but it is definitely an issue. So we can classify incentives into positive and negative. And I think the most important positive incentive is reputation. We're our best peer reviewers. We need to make sure that we have a high cost of publishing bad work. We need to also be tolerant for failure, and we need to prioritize adoptions of methods. And the negative are all this bibliographic nonsense and rewards for high-profile journal publications. And here in some countries, there are monetary rewards to do that. And that, of course, creates an influx of bad data pushed through such journals and hyper competition for resources. So at NYU, Els Freemans and myself have the group for over a decade. We're trying to, create good incentives. We use, of course, Archive and GitHub. We haven't tried NeuroLibre yet. We try to make sure that the projects are distinct between group members and avoid unnecessary competition. So help is encouraged, but there is no real competition. And we try to diversify. Each trainee gets a mix of fundamental and applied projects, so tolerance to failure. But the question is, what could be the impact of tech solutions on changing these incentives? Of course, adoption of methods is what this is all about. That's unquestionable. But the question is whether modern methods like NeuroLibre can help us, to improve the cost, of reputation in all of this, and maybe increase the high cost of publishing bad works. Whether you have comments or threads, and however, even that can be noisy. The number of likes or the length of a thread about each paper or debate on each paper can be also kind of have a negative connotation, much like the number of citations. So you never really know. So I guess to conclude, my main point is reproducibility crisis. I view it as a symptom, not the disease. The question is what the disease is. If you insist to use the word crisis, I would rather say maybe crisis of values. And then the question is, can we cure crisis of values with software? However, if the values and incentives are right, tech solutions can be an enormous force multiplier. It could be really a force for good. But really, the human being, no matter how many apps and we have cool apps in our pipeline, the human being is always the weakest link. And the question is, can tech solutions help change incentives and make better human behavior? So maybe the challenge is to the thought leaders present in this audience to hope to try to rethink our incentives to make sure that our next generation of scientists can realize their true greatness. With all that, I thank you for your invitation. I really commend you for starting this and for your intellectual honesty and your drive. It's a really courageous project to undertake, and I'm really impressed how far you've come, and I hope we'll continue our conversation.